Hello, Sync and Flow family, and welcome to another Sync in sessions. So, today we are going to be chatting to a very good sister of mine, and she actually did the Red 10 training with me, and so I'm very excited to be chatting to her today. Vicky, hello. She should be joining us any minute. Hi.
Hello, Josie.
How are you, love? So good to
Good.
see
Can you hear
you.
me?
Yes, perfectly.
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you.
Yeah, excited to
So
be here.
good to chat to you. Yeah, thank you for agreeing to come on and chat to us. It's
I'm so
honestly been
excited.
yeah, it's been so long since we've connected. And yeah, I was just saying before you got on that you're such a special sister of mine, having done the Red 10 training together. And yeah, I feel like that really bonded us for many lifetimes to come.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've both gone on such insane journeys to get where we are now since we did that training. And yeah, I'm kind of wanting to just pick your brain about your journey and how, you've come to where you are now and how that has influenced, how the training influenced your coaching today. And yeah, maybe you just want to give a little introduction to your story and to who you are, etc.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, well, the training basically, the Red 10 training basically formed the heart of the coaching that I do now because I did a traditional life coaching certification. But it was really through the Red 10 training that I realized, that the core of my work sits in this feminine wisdom
Mm,
and helping women to really heal that core wound of low self-worth, but also to connect with their authenticity, right? Their true nature, so that they can express themselves according to that inner wisdom, which is what I see the feminine energy as.
mm-hmm.
So the training really shaped everything for me. And, I think my journey with the womb or with the feminine energy began, and you know this, with my fertility struggles and a
Mm-hmm.
very difficult, kind of traumatic conception journey,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I now think, the divine influence that brought me to this work
Mm,
and, helped me to understand my body, understand my menstrual cycle, and the profound, wisdom that brings and the profound effect that it just has on us as women, just a
totally,
physiological point of view.
totally.
And then coming to what I do now, which is helping women to really harness that mind body connection through the combination of understanding their menstrual cycle and then also through the major feminine archetypes,
Yes,
which have a place
exactly,
in each phase of the cycle. Yeah.
exactly. And how we can just, wholeheartedly embody all aspects of the archetypal energy that lives within us, that drives the divine feminine. And it's really, I think, a lot of like this new age Instagram like understanding is like the divine feminine is just like this cookie cutter like angle,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it's actually so much deeper than that, and it's so much deeper than we could ever explain through one post or one chat or one live. And I feel like as facilitators, it's our role to kind of guide people into finding their own channel through that, and their own expression of what does this mean for me? How does my body, how does my soul, how does my mind want to express this energy?
Exactly. And, specifically because archetypes can be kind of a difficult thing for people to really come to or come to understand kind of they can help them. But I think what resonated with me in the beginning of my journey so much is that, you know, I was doing a lot of the work with the menstrual cycle, and, you know, really fascinated with, you know, the huge role that this plays in our lives as women, especially considering that we're really conditioned to reject it, and a lot of the time, or override it, or dull it down, whether it's with painkillers or just push through it, or whatever the case may be. And so I was working a lot with that, and reclaiming the value of it. And then kind of came across a book about this that just made mention of the archetypes. It didn't really go in depth, but it sparked a lot of curiosity for me about, you know, what is that? Like, what do they mean by that? And if you kind of are new to the work, the four major feminine archetypes are the maiden, the mother, the wild woman, and the crone, which on a very broad spectrum represent the life cycle. Yes. And so as a woman, and then you know, represent a phase of your menstrual cycle, which has 4 phases as well. And this just really invoked a lot of curiosity for me. And then when I kind of got into it, I realized that, you know, it just made so much sense to me. It just resonated with me, and I could see it in my menstrual cycle, and I could see it in the seasons of the earth, and I could see it in the phases of the moon, and I could see it in all these different spaces. And I kind of felt like this language was being revealed to me in a way, like a symbolic language, which can sound quite big and broad, but you know, I think the work that I really want to focus on is to help people to look into, because so much of our inner wisdom is inherited, right? We have this untapped well of intuition and inner wisdom and authenticity that is kind of drowned out by the mental noise.
Totally,
you know,
totally. Because it all sits in the body.
Absolutely. We've been kind of taught to just dull the messages of our body and just not listen to them, right? So yeah, but what also fascinated me was that the patterning, the wounds, the stuff that we get stuck in can also be inherited and can sit in this kind of subconscious mind.
Totally. I always say to people, we inherit generational trauma, but we also inherit generational wisdom. And it's about like clearing the mud of the trauma so that we can access the higher vibrational wisdom.
Exactly. So the work with the womb for me is really, first and foremost, is establishing that awareness. And there's so many tools to do that. One of them is understanding your menstrual cycle. And then another one is understanding how these archetypes are playing a role in, you know, why do you keep getting stuck in the same patterns? Why are you unable to, you know, speak up or set a boundary? Because the most important thing is that you're able to implement it on a very practical day-to-day level. You know, like, why are you making these choices? Why are you choosing that relationship? Why are you choosing that job? Why are you responding in this way? Is it coming from your inner wisdom, your authenticity, your higher self, whatever you want to call it? Or is it coming from a space of conditioning that is rooted in fear, or, you know, not your truth? So that's where I really like to bring women in and sit and say, you know, okay, well, how is this playing out in your daily life, and how can you use that as a vehicle?
Totally. And make it a bit more practical, so it's not so like abstract and up in the air, you know.
Exactly.
So you mentioned the 4 archetypes. So like you said, the maiden, the mother, the crone, and the wise woman, or is it?
Yes, the wild woman.
The wild woman and then the crone.
Yes.
Yeah. So if within the menstrual cycle, that's the maiden corresponding to spring, the mother corresponding to summer, which is ovulation. Then we have the wild woman responding to autumn, which is our luteal phase. And then we have the crone connecting to the menstrual phase.
Exactly.
And so maybe we can just go into each archetype and maybe speak a little bit about like some light and shadow aspects of each, maybe to just give a bit more practical understanding, so that when it does pop up in someone's life, they can be like, oh right, this is me acting from the Maiden shadow type. How do I balance that out?
Okay. All right. So okay, so let me give you an example then with the crow and the wise woman. In your menstruation phase, your body hormonally is in an absolute reset. So all of your hormones kind of drop down to their lowest level. But not only that, it's the only point in your cycle where they are all almost completely even. So your body is literally resetting on a hormonal level. So if you are able to tune into just your body's intuition, or what your body's messages are saying, that's already a call for a slowing down, right? A rest, a restoration. Your body's also, when your body is depleted like that, it actually in a way can deplete your mind, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a really good thing, because it's an opportunity to just drop out of that noise, drop out of that rational thought, drop out of that logic and right and wrong and judgment criteria, and drop into the body and be able to first of all work from there. And then if you're harnessing the archetype of the crone or the wise woman, so I see these archetypes almost like they're patterns in your subconscious mind, but I visualize them almost as companions, or almost like forms of energy, if that makes sense, within yourself. And, you can kind of look at the light and shadow aspects, and look at, okay, what is playing out here? So the light aspects of the crow and the wise woman are things like being spiritually connected, being in touch with intuition, being safe with her emotions, safe with her vulnerability, and then leaning into restoration, allowing for that, honoring that as part of the creative process, a really important part of the creative process, whereas we tend to feel like we need to be doing and productive. That's really, that's valuable. And then you can look at, well, just as we've rejected menstruation, and just as we've rejected the value of restoration, in a physical world, we've rejected the value of the aging process, the value of the elder that you kind of hold within you, right? That wisdom, that life experience. So if you're having a menstruation phase that is full of resistance, that is full of, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be resting, I don't want to be feeling this physical pain, I don't want to be feeling these emotions, then you can look at the shadow side of your inner wise woman, which is, very judgmental, very fearful of change, the menstruation being the beginning and end, a shift into a new cycle. And you can start to look from, and I always tell my clients, establish yourself as the awareness, as the observer. And then look at, absolutely, look at it in an impersonal way as much as you can, And then two of the tools that I use, two of the ways you can do this, one is through self-inquiry. So questioning, how is this? How am I being judgmental towards myself? In what ways am I resisting this present moment? Because as soon as you drop into that energy of surrender, you will experience, firstly, an immense amount of relief that you're not fighting the present moment. And secondly, you can allow that inner wisdom to come through. And then the second way that I do this is through a tool called dynamic visualization, where you actually sit down and you drop into kind of a deep meditative state, and then you actually call this archetype forward. You ask her to step forward in front of you and speak to you. And this tool's really, really helpful because it really taps you out of that logical thought.
Yeah.
So it's a very, it's very experiential. it's not that easy to get your head around it in the mind. It really comes through the practice of the conscious cycling and working with your tools. But I don't know if that was helpful, if that made
No,
sense.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I often do a ancestral meditation as well with my clients as well, when you just kind of imagine them all standing behind you with your hands on your shoulders, and kind of like blessing you to go forward and receive their downloads and their intuition. And yeah, I think that's such a beautiful way, especially, you know, so many of us are not like, I don't know, just my personal experience, I love my granny, but I'm not like close with her where I can speak about these things with her, you know. And I feel like it will almost kind of give that deeper layer of like, there is an inner crone within me, an inner wise woman that's wanting to support me and nourish me on such a deep level. You know, we're quite separated from our ancestral lineages, you know. And so I think that can help bring that energetic foundation for like my ancestry, you know. And
Yeah.
whether that's wanting to be, whether that woman is your granny or not, you know, it doesn't really matter. It also could be like a great, you know, ancestral connection from many lifetimes ago, you know. I feel like that really can help connect that inner heart connection.
Yes. From an ancestral point of view, I mean, particularly, and I can only speak to like the Western culture that I'm a part of, it's definitely, you know, we haven't really respected that wisdom that's come down. But the great thing about doing this work and healing through the archetypes and knowing that you hold this inner mother, you hold this inner grandmother, when you heal through those archetypes and when you heal that subconscious patterning, you are actually able to then pass down those healed traits to whatever ancestors may come from you. So
Exactly.
that's like a really, really powerful thing as well, because and it can happen on a subconscious level, which is really nice. You don't have to be thinking about, I need to heal this, I need to heal that. Because the thing that really drew me to the archetypes in the beginning is that our spiritual practice can get so serious sometimes too. That was you know, something that was happening to me. I was getting so almost judgmental of myself through my spiritual practice, like, oh, that's my ego and I've like messed up again. And you know, I think it like can get really like intense sometimes, and there is a place for that seriousness and that reverence and that sacredness to it. But for me, the archetypes brought in that energy of joy, you know, that energy of delight and
And I
fun.
think that brings us to our next archetype, which is the maiden.
Yes. So the maiden archetype in terms of your cycle, okay, so physically, from around day 3, day 4, you should start feeling better because your estrogen levels are starting to rise. And estrogen is your feel-good hormone. It interacts with dopamine and serotonin, which are two hormones that really help with mood and energy levels. And your maiden is really in the life cycle. She's, you know, there's a death and rebirth through all these cycles. So the child is now facing a death, and the woman is being born with menarche, your first menstruation. And this doesn't mean that everyone's life is going to be exactly in these four, but it's you hold this energy within you, right? This pattern.
Yeah.
And so the maiden is really, her light signs are curious, playful. You know, the key takeaway that I like to give my clients in this archetype is this power of response. It's where you're kind of letting go and you know, of the ideas and beliefs that you were raised with and maybe were taught, and you're starting to form and integrate your own perceptions, your own place in the world, your own level of independence. So on a larger scale, you can say you're starting to disconnect from the conditioning of society that doesn't resonate with you anymore.
Yeah.
And then on the shadow side, maiden traits can get, you know, overwhelmed. The thing you have to watch out for in this phase of your cycle and through this archetype is taking on too much, committing to too much. You know, the maiden is a very inspired energy. So what can happen is we get ideas, you know, ideas come to us, And you know, in the world of outside of the human world, the spiritual world, things move in a different time space. So we can get ideas like really, really quickly, and they're coming through, and then we want to act on everything, and we want to do everything, and we want to be here, and we end up in overwhelm, and we end up not being able to see things through and not being able to finish them. So the lesson of the maiden is really to connect what brings you joy, to stay curious, to try new things, to make mistakes, because you're very resilient in this archetype as well, which your body supports with those good feeling hormones. So making mistakes doesn't feel so disastrous. But you know, you've got to watch, you've got to keep an eye, you've got to be mindful that you're not just impulsively jumping into all these different things, and you're staying connected to your truth. And that's why a lot of people ask me, like, why do we start this on the crone archetype? Like, isn't that the end? And I'm like, no, that's the beginning and the end. And it's because your wise woman, she supports all of the other ones. So you know, when you're moving into a shadow maiden and you're people pleasing and you're not putting up boundaries and you're saying yes to everything, and then you're just like, I can't deal with this, and you just
We've all been there.
that's what I encourage, dropping back into that wise woman archetype, getting back into being, getting back into surrender, getting recentered, and then coming back and calling on that inner maiden.
I think there is a tendency for the maiden to be very ungrounded.
Absolutely.
And I think that's definitely something that I've experienced in my life. And only since I started cycling consciously was I able to, just come from a more grounded place in every aspect of my cycle, because I was more expectant of the energy within my body at that certain phase, you know. And then you can kind of almost predict, like, okay, the tendencies are this, therefore I should look out for overextending myself, people pleasing, saying yes to too many things, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing is, like, you know, people, the feminine approach is really gentle, and the wise woman is really the embodiment of that.
Yeah.
But people sometimes think that gentle is easy, and
Yeah.
gentle is not always easy. We're actually conditioned, like we're actually more comfortable with going, like pushing and going really hard on things and trying to like make it happen, and we're actually more comfortable with that. When it's time for us to slow down, to stop, that's when our mind really gets noisy, right?
Totally.
Because now this is not productive, this is not valuable, this is not make me a valuable human. So yeah, that's definitely, and the mother as well, which is the next one, the ovulation phase. So that's everything peaking, your estrogen's peaking, your testosterone's peaking, which makes you very action driven, competitive, you know, brings in all those things that can be really, really valuable in terms of, you know, meeting your goals, and especially your creative power, right? Birthing into the world. But the shadow of that as well is also getting attached to that, wanting to be there all the time, wanting to achieve, and again putting your value in that achievement. So when shadow things come, I'm always like, come back to the wise woman, let her ground you. Her element is earth, and then begin again.
Yeah, totally. What happens to me actually is I'll be in that ovulation phase, like so excited by life, just want to go out, see all my friends, and then I make plans for like a week later, 2 weeks later, and then like that time comes and I'm actually like, I want to be a hermit now, like I don't want to do anything, like I'm really cynical and I'm feeling quite bitchy right now, like I don't want to, you know. Then from the mother we get to that like PMS kind of premenstrual luteal phase, where we can become quite cynical and quite like in the depths of like our psyche. I don't know if that's something that you found.
Absolutely. Like what I do and what I give my clients tips to do, and a lot of the women that I work with are really busy corporate women, so don't think, you know, they can't just stop on
Yeah.
menstruation. They can't just tune out. But what I do say to them is I say to them, you've got to track your cycle. I mean, that's the game changer that I wish I could just give to every woman as a beginning, and just to
Mm.
see, how they really are feeling throughout their cycle. But I encourage them to actually put it into their calendar as a rough idea, like where are they going to be in their cycle, and then knowing when their energy takes a dip, when they're not feeling good, when they're not handling things properly, to they've still got to go to work, they've still got the kids, they've still got all of that stuff, but to just take away what they can. I'm like, don't schedule your CrossFit session for that time of your cycle. Like, drinks with the girls, schedule it for like 10 days later. Keep an eye on that stuff, because you're a cyclical being, and it's through honoring that, it's really through honoring that the healing can organically come through for you as well. And it can happen in really practical ways, like just putting it in your Google calendar.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And we need to take those steps for ourselves, it's like for the the best of our abilities to be able to function better, and it's like we always think the world has so many expectations of us as women, but it's like, what are the expectations that you're putting on yourself first and foremost? Like, you are a sovereign being, and in the end, like, no one else is going to respect your time until you respect your time and you respect your energy. And yeah, like I said, like, it's just so important to just be aware of what may be coming, so you're not just like thrown off, and you're not blindsided, by your own body, and I feel like that when people are blindsided by their own body, they have a negative relationship with their cycle. But when you can actually be aware of what's to come, you work with your body as a friend, and you work with like,
Absolutely.
okay, this is when this is going to happen. Okay, now I can like actually start to prepare my mind, body, soul to prepare for slowing down more, like maybe shifting some responsibilities to my partner or to other people, or like not taking on so much. And so the archetype of the luteal phase is the wild woman, right?
Wild woman, and that is the archetype in the life cycle when you would be sort of entering into perimenopause and menopause. And again, this isn't every woman's experience, but in the kind of archetypal journey, the people that you look after, whether it's children or that kind of stuff, they're starting to go out on their own. And a lot of women face this point, first of all, through menopause. Okay, there's a death and rebirth that's happening, and I think a grief, that people don't acknowledge, this loss of your menstrual cycle, of your fertility. It's a transitionary time. And there's also a rebirth happening, because when all of that external stuff falls away, when all of that external responsibility falls away, you get this incredible opportunity to figure out, like, who am I? Yes, some people call it the wild enchantress phase, exactly. And again, like, these archetypes are dynamic, so they can manifest in different ways, just like the inner child. You can have the wounded child, you can have the nature child, you can have the dream child. Each of these archetypes has a unique manifestation that's going to look, there's a universal structure, but then the content is going to be unique to you.
Exactly.
But really, the lesson that this archetype gives us, and the opportunity that this archetype gives us, is to let go of summer, to let go of, to enjoy it while it is, and then to move into autumn, to move into the next phase, to let the body drop down and embrace that, what that is, what that can bring you, what that can give you. And in terms of the cycle, so this archetype's incredibly healing. It contains the inner healer wisdom that you have, and it's a connection to nature. It's very emotionally driven, as you probably feel at this time in your cycle, because the hormone progesterone is coming up.
Come up. Yeah.
Yeah. And progesterone plays right into the amygdala part of the brain, which is your part of your brain that holds your fight or flight responses, which means that your intuition is genuinely up. That is the time in your cycle when you're like not putting up with anything. That is the time when you're seeing right through like all the bullshit, because your
Yeah.
brain is is actually trying to protect you in case you are pregnant. So this is the time that you are like really intuitive and on it and very detail orientated. The shadow
Yeah.
side of it is highly critical, both of
Yeah.
yourself and other people. So you want to be watching out for that, because then you're not in your authentic self. You know, you need to be able to see inauthenticity as, you know, somebody else's having, you know, their journey with consciousness, as are you, and you're not going to be authentic all the time. And kind of get this discernment between, I'm going to look after myself without having to, you know, blame or put revenge on anyone else, which is the shadow side of this archetype, you know. So I mean, it's all just beautiful and fascinating. And
Yeah,
you've
I've loved this
done
chat so
incredible work.
much. I learned so much as well. You know, every time you dive deep in, you give up more and more gems every time, you know, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
It's such a pleasure. I just want to leave with, you know, the one thing that I think a lot of women struggle with, especially with doing this kind of work and making time for this kind of work and cycling consciously, is they carry a lot of guilt. And
Mm,
so the one thing that I always want to remind women of is that, you know, give from a full cup is what is going to most benefit the people around you.
mm,
Um, and, you know, how do you want to be showing up for people? You obviously want to be showing up as your best self, as taken care of. And yeah, that's just always my message for when it comes to that self-worth aspect. You deserve it because the people you love deserve it too. So
totally. Totally. And I think also just acknowledging that, like, sometimes we are going to be externally focused, sometimes we're going to be internally focused, and then, like, there will be those transitionary times, you know, the spring and the autumn are very transitionary, like, aspects of our cycle. And I feel like that's when we can allow more to come to us, because we're not like reaching for ideas, we're not like trying to make things happen, but it's like that's when we can actually kind of sit back and relax more into that like feminine place of being, where it's like our manifestations can come to us, our opportunities can come to us, rather than us trying to like always go out and reach, you know. And it's like you need to have that time, that downtime, to almost prepare your body, prepare your mind to transition into the next phase. And I think the more space and love and compassion we give to ourselves during those transitionary times, the more we're going to start enjoying the actual cycle, the whole cycle, you know. And also just from my own experience, the more rest that I take during my menstrual phase, the more energy I actually have to harness during the rest of my cycle, because you're actually acknowledging that rest is a huge part of being productive. And it sounds counterintuitive, but this is the new framework that we need to kind of establish into this world where, you know, resting is more productive than just go, 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 because it allows for that, like, that downtime, that integration, that space, that breathing space, to
mm-hmm.
that deep exhale, you know, where you can kind of just like forget about everything, forget about responsibilities, and just kind of focus back on the self. And in turn, that will start to develop that internal energy, and then the cycle can start again, and you can show up in every phase of the cycle authentically, with energy, in alignment with what is best for yourself and your body.
Absolutely. There's a reason the earth is designed that way, and there's a reason our bodies are designed that way, and it's an intelligence that's massive. So
Totally, and it's far beyond our comprehension. And so instead of just fighting it, it's like, are we going to be cycling anyway? Why fight it? Why not just, surrender to that process and learn something not only about yourself, but also about others at the same time? So thank you for this beautiful introduction.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's so
It was
wonderful to talk
awesome to be
to you.
here.
Yeah, and we'll definitely connect soon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Josie. Bye.
Bye.